Hello, welcome back to another video. Today's topic is Arkhaven Comics. Arkhaven Comics is kind of like a webtoon inspired comics website, primarily helmed by Chuck Dixon, although there are a number of other talented writers and artists across the board on the website. Um, this place, this website has been a haven and a godsend for me in many ways. Before I get too into it, though, I do want to mention that I am creating a comic book, and it will. This is the first time I've said this publicly as well, but it will be readable for free on Arkhaven. So I will be as unbiased as possible in this video, but do note I do have a somewhat professional relationship with this website. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let's talk about Arkhaven. So it is a website where you can read comic books for free. Most of these comic books are helmed by the one and only Chuck Dixon. And I mean, if you don't know who Chuck Dixon is, you're probably either new to comic books and you've read his work and didn't realize it, or I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. He's probably, in fact, I would say he is one of the most prominent members of the comic book world, creating some of the most memorable and best runs of Batman, Punisher, Batgirl, Robin, you name it. Chuck Dixon had his hand in inventing something to do with it. So, I mean, if that doesn't convince you to check this website out, which is my goal of this video, then perhaps talking about some of the comic books that I've been reading on Arkhaven might help. So we'll start with the first one that I really got into, which is Avalon. Avalon, or better known as Chuck Dixon's Avalon, is about, how to explain this? It's a superhero comic about a hero called King Ace and his sidekick Phaser. Now, King Ace is a true hero, not a vigilante, and he has a code and rules and ethics that he follows. He's kind of like your Superman. He can't fly, but he is invulnerable, mostly. And Phaser has the ability to phase through walls and make himself basically into sort of like a ghostly being. Now, Phaser doesn't have the same morale compass as King Ace, and so they do end up getting into a bit of a scuffle, and I don't want to spoil the story, but that's sort of the where this starts off. King Ace ends up working for a superhero sort of group trying to solve crimes and superhero crimes of the sort, and Ace Phaser goes off and does his own thing, which, like I said, I'll try and keep the spoilers sort of limited for this. Now, this was the first comic that I truly read on Arkhaven and was like, hey, there's something good going on here. It does start off pretty rough, I'm going to say, honestly. You've got to get through the first 5 chapters, and then it sort of starts to come together. And you'll hear me say that a couple of times. However, once you get through those sort of introductory chapters, there's a lot under the covers here. And it's such an interesting concept. There are some overlaps here with some of the ideas in my own comic book. But definitely, if you're into your superhero-y sort of stuff, this is one to look at. So take that for what it is. This is the first one that I read, and I really enjoyed. And I'm excited. I read the weekly updates for it, and every time I want to know a little bit more. So definitely worth checking out. Now, the next comic that I enjoy to read is also a superhero comic, and this one is called Flying Sparks, and it's by John Del Arroz, and it is a superhero comic, like I said before. The lead character is Chloe Anderson, and she is a physics student by day, very smart, very hardworking. Her professor is a mad scientist, so that's something interesting. But she moonlights as the superhero Metagirl, who is essentially like a underpowered Supergirl, is how I would describe her. Her boyfriend, Johnny Benvenuti, comes from a well-established Italian crime family and is also a supervillain. So you have this dynamic where they're dating each other, but they are on opposite sides of the law in their private life. With that being said, he runs a coffee shop, which is where most of the early sort of chapters take place. And once again, this is another comic where it really took a couple of chapters for me to understand what was going on and sort of what they were going for here. Once you get past, I'm going to say, about 8-9 issues, and they're not long, but once you get past the first 8 or 9 chapters, and so far we have, I couldn't even tell you, I think 33 chapters. But once you get past the first 8 or so, the story really comes into effect. You're through those awkward introductory panels, and it's interesting. I enjoy it. I like the dynamic. I like the whole Romeo and Juliet, but criminal sort of thing going on there. This is a comic where, in my opinion, it can only end with a tragedy. And I'll be very upset if it doesn't. But yeah, definitely another one to look at. It's a, female-focused like superhero comic, but not a feminine superhero comic. And I really enjoy the dynamic that it adds. The art is really great as well, if that helps. But yeah, good overall comic. I'm a big fan. And sticking with the superhero theme, on to the third one. So the next one that I want to talk about, the next comic on Arkhaven that I think you should read, is My Sister Suprema. Now, this is very, very new. It debuted in October 2021. Now, this is another Chuck Dixon comic, so you know it's quality. But it's a bit of a spin, and it's more fun, lighthearted, and I'm going to say more influenced by manga than comic books, but that's not a bad thing. So, My Sister Suprema is about a boy called Randy. And Randy wants to be a superhero. That's his dream, like every young boy. He wants to be a superhero. So he orders a Make Yourself a Superhero kit online. Things go wrong, and he accidentally turns his big sister into a superhero. Now, Randy's big sister is like every teenage girl. She doesn't want to be a superhero. She wants to, listen to music, be left alone, get through the day without being embarrassed. She's a teenage girl. But now she has these superpowers. And Randy is sort of pushing her into this superhero lifestyle because, that's how cool is that? My big sister's a superhero. It's a little humorous. The art is very fun. There's a lot of animated poses in this. It's really something fun to look at. It's only new. There's only, I think, 10 chapters out at the moment, but I've read all 10, and I love what we've got so far, and I'm really excited to see where this one goes, and I can't wait to see Suprema come out there and actually take on a crime. Another really, really fun comic book. So that's another great one to read. Moving on. So moving away from comic books, we now have Alt Hero Q. Now, Alt Hero Q, I can describe it as a cooler, more modern James Bond, or the fourth Die Hard movie if it was good. Alt Hero Q is about federal agent Roland Dane. He's sent to Peru to escort a US cabinet member, and has no reason to believe his assignment is connected in any way to his Treasury team's recent busting of an amateur counterfeiting operation. However, when things go wrong and they are attacked by what seems to be a terrorist organization, Dane is sort of left on the run, being blamed for everything, and he's contacted by Q. Now, Q, we don't know who Q is. Q is everyone and no one. He interacts with Dane through a mobile phone, giving him objectives, telling him where to go, what to do, sending him hints and evidence and all sorts of things. And Dane, being a very skilled, soldier and agent, sort of does what he has to with that. It's very Bourne Identity, James Bondy. There's great action in it. There's a lot of good combat. The art is top notch. As expected by Chuck Dixon, who does this one as well. I really, really enjoy this. I didn't have any issues getting into this one. Unlike some of the My Sister Suprema and Avalon, this one from the very opening chapter just grips you and goes on and on and on. This is a AAA tier sort of thriller suspense comic book, full of action, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's probably, if you're going to pick any comic to read and you're into this sort of genre, this is the one to start off with Arkhaven. If you don't like this, I don't know. Maybe you're just not into action comics, but oh my gosh, it's so fun. Moving away from superheroes and secret agents, we have the Ember War, which is by John Del Arroz, who, as I mentioned before, also does my Flying Sparks comic, my second pick on this list. So the Ember War is a science fiction comic book. How to describe it? I would say, think Macross meets Gundam meets Star Trek meets Battlestar Galactica. Like, it's a sort of a mix of all the good science fiction out there. The Ember War is about a space fleet of humans, and this gentleman called Ibarra, who makes contact with an alien. And the alien warns him that there's an invasion coming to Earth and he has to do what he says if he wants Earth to survive. And so Ibarra does that. He takes this group of, this space fleet, think of Star Trek or Macross-style space fleet, and he does some things and essentially, I'm trying not to spoil it, guys, okay? I really want you to read these and let me know what you think about them, because they're fun. This is a very good comic. So you have this space fleet, and they have to, basically defend Earth from this alien invasion. That's what I'll say without spoiling it. I really enjoyed this. It gave me sort of vibes of, like I said, Macross, The Expanse, Gundam, all the good sci-fi stuff over my lifetime. There's hints of it influence and scattered through this comic, and it's really fun. It's got good action. There's some good character moments in it too. There's about 25 episodes available, so it's not the longest running so far, but with new updates every week and all the other comics on this website, you won't run out of things to read here. So if you're into your sci-fi sort of action-y stuff, like I mentioned before, Ember War by John Del Arroz is really, really good. There's a lot going on here, and I do definitely recommend it for fans of science fiction. Okay, moving away from sci-fi and superheroes, which are kind of science fiction anyway, but moving away from that, let's look at fantasy now. I've been reading 2 fantasy comics on Arkhaven, and the first one is Deus Volt, also by John Del Arroz. Now, Deus Volt is a very interesting comic. It's heavily religiously influenced on the Christian side. So if you don't like that stuff, or you can't dare read something of that influence, if that's too much for you, don't read it. Okay? But if you're able to put that aside and understand that people have beliefs and take it for what it is, this is a very, very fun comic. It's very reminiscent of sort of classic 80s He-Man-y sort of comics that I read a long time ago. And it's full of sort of motivational messages and imagery, and very inspiring. A very inspiring script for people to read if, once again, this is the sort of thing that you like. In terms of the plot, it's about Sir Domingo. He's a Spanish knight and a holy crusader, and he's blessed with a vision on his return from his triumphant conquest of the Holy Land, with this image of the Holy Grail. And he follows the Holy Grail, which leads him into another realm, and this happens to be a realm full of demons and sort of, supernatural creatures. He teams up with a cat girl. She's called, I think it's called Kityin or Kityin. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. That's one of the downsides of reading and not listening. But teams up with her, and they go on this adventure to stop the Demon King, as he believes is God's will. The art is fantastic. I love this. I know some people might think it looks a little old or cheesy, but for me, it's very nostalgic. And oh, it's just a fun, wholesome, inspirational comic. It's not trying to punch above its weight. It's just telling you a very fun story. And while, the characters are a little two-dimensional, etc., a lot of characters are two-dimensional in that sort of 70s, 80s, hero cartoon sort of world. And that's very much what this is inspired by, clearly. So if you like your science fiction, I highly recommend you check out... sorry, not science fiction. What am I talking about? Oh my gosh. If you're into fantasy comics and maybe you're as old as I am and you want something with that 80s influence, Deus Volt is definitely worth a read. And now, the last comic on my list is A Throne of Bones by Vox Day. Now, A Throne of Bones is an interesting fantasy comic. I was curious. At first, I didn't want to read this one because it seemed to be about Roman centurions, and I was just like, I don't know. And it wasn't really hooking me. Then I saw promotional art of goblins and orcs and stuff, and I was like, what's going on here? And the art is fantastic once again. So I gave it a go. I was like, all right, let's see what this is all about. And so essentially, A Throne of Bones is this weird fantasy world where we're in this sort of Roman legion time, but there's orcs and goblins and elves and magic and all this sort of stuff as well. So it's fantasy, but in a slightly different time period than what you're used to, with a slightly different group of people than what you're used to. It's heavily influenced by Roman history and not by medieval English history or Asian history, which is what we normally get more of, is that sort of Chinese, Japanese sort of history, or, medieval English stuff. It's very rare that you get, Rome's in a, fantasy setting. So it's very interesting. The story is about... I don't know how to explain this one, because it has a few different viewpoints. So you've got this story with the Roman legions. I don't even know if they're Roman, to be honest with you. I don't even think this takes place on Earth, but I'm calling them the Roman legions. And they're at war with the goblins, and you have that sort of story. But then you've got the story from the goblins' perspective and these goblin characters, and they're really sympathetic characters because they're goblins. They're not the strongest, they're not the smartest. They can't go toe-to-toe with orcs, and they can't go toe-to-toe with humans. Yeah, they're the cannon fodder of fantasy. But yeah, so they're very sort of... You empathize with them. You really feel for these goblin characters as well. Although it's an ongoing series. There's 28 chapters right now, so there's still more to learn. But I'm really digging this as a fantasy nerd, as someone who really likes fantasy comics. The Roman Legion stuff might put some people off, but the Goblin stuff hooked me, and I really want to know more about the Goblin side of things. Now, I know these are based on a series of fantasy novels called Arts of Dark and Light. I haven't read them. I don't know anything about them. I don't know much about this author. I don't know anything about this one. So I can't really base it on how well of a adaptation of that this is. However, what I can tell you is this comic book is good. It's a solid fantasy comic book with some well-written characters in an interesting setting I haven't seen much of before. And it hooked me. I'm like I said, I'm waiting for the weekly episodes to come out, and I cannot wait for more of this one. So I hope, one of these comic books that I've just spoke about has caught your interest, and you head on down to Arkhaven.com and just give it a look, because there is so much more on this website that I didn't mention. There's comedy, there's drama, there's action, there's spy stuff, there's superhero stuff, there's religious stuff. And there's a bit of everything here for everyone. There's retro comics, modern comics. There really is a bit of everything here. And it's expanding every day. I mean, I say we like I'm part of the team. I'm not part of the team, but I'm a fan and I feel connected to Arkhaven. And yes, I do have a comic coming out on there soon. But, there's new comics all the time on Arkhaven, and there's going to be more. So what I'm going to do is I will make a follow-up video on Arkhaven Comics in a few months maybe. Don't hold me to that, but when a reasonable amount of time has passed and there's enough new comics on there that I've read, or when I've read some more of the comics that are on there, for sure. And I'll let you know what I'm currently reading on Arkhaven in the future. But this is what I've been reading the last couple of weeks, and I'm having a ball, and it's all free, and it's high resolution, and you can read it on your phone, read it on your TV, read it on your tablet, read it on your computer. It doesn't matter. It's just a website. It works on everything. You don't need to sign up or anything. Just go to arkhaven.com, scroll through the list of comics, and click one that interests you. There are some more that interest me, but I haven't read them yet, so I haven't spoken about them yet. However, I will in the future. And anyway, that's Arkhaven.com, probably one of the best resources for independent and professional grade comics out there at the moment, 100% free. So, if you want to get into comics and you're looking for new things to read, or you want to check out the indie comic space and support some independent creators, check out Arkhaven.com. I'm not saying that because my comic is going to be on there. My comic's going to be on there because I believe in Arkhaven.com and I love what they're doing, and I believe in that, and I want to make the world a better place for comic fans and comic readers to, enjoy this stuff. So there we go. I'm not ashamed of that at all, and I'm not going to hide that from you. And that's it, because I'm starting to ramble. So thank you. Have a good night. Comment down below. Tell me what comic you like on Arkhaven, what comics you don't like on Arkhaven. Let me know what you think. I'm really interested in, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but I can't. But there's one about this, I think she's a princess, and she goes to a like, she ends up having to work, like, learn how to become an assassin. It's like Assassin Harry Potter. I'm really interested in that one. I don't know anything about it, but I'm interested, for what it's worth. So that might be up on a future issue. Who knows? We'll see. Don't forget to subscribe. Subscribing is something that makes me smile, and I will see you in the next video.